Welcome to the future, where the glass is half full and you'll need new glasses, where you'll be jumping from conclusions.
The past is annulled, and a new future is born.
Never before in history has so much meant so little to so many. AD on the radio.
It's you and the senorita. Woofer blowing up the tweeter, cause it's me up in the speaker. Back in the mama seat, top down like a player. And the sound up in your ears, it is the dopest rhyme say. Running game like a cheater on ball.
We are joined on the show today by comedian Steve Hofstetter, who's hanging out. He's an excellent guy to hang out with, very accomplished guy, a lot of fun to be around. You might have caught him as he is the senior comedy correspondent for Fox Sports, host and executive producer of Laughs on Fox Networks. He's also got over 27 million views on YouTube, a lot of which happens to be him dealing with hecklers. Like, you've made a name for yourself being the guy that, I guess, sort of like heckler shames or deals with hecklers or puts hecklers in their place on the interwebs. And that's sort of like the part of your career that, look, as much as you've done and as impressive as the rest of your resume is, and it really, really is, that seems to be, you say that's what most people recognize you from. You're like, oh, you're that guy from YouTube that has hecklers.
It's the weirdest thing. It like that nobody, like, I have a television show. I have multiple television shows. I'm in movies, and people are just like, but the thing on the YouTube, I saw you were mean to a guy once, and that was the best. It's just what people like. It's, you know, you can. There's a great line in the one of my favorite lines in literature history. Dr. Seuss in the Lorax said, "So I said to the Lorax, you poor stupid guy, you never can tell what people will buy."
Well, yeah, it's kind of true, but it makes me wonder a little bit if you have become sort of like the prize fighter, the Tyson. Like, if you are Tyson, if you represent a belt or a crown to would-be hecklers, like, oh, man, I'm going to heckle him, and it's going to be on YouTube, and I might be the guy that gets the better of him, or this will be my moment of fame. I'm going to be a heckler that he has to shut down during his show. Do you find that you get an inordinately large amount of hecklers now, thanks to the way you've gotten your internet fame?
There has not been a single person who has heckled me because of the videos. Because
really?
Yeah, it hasn't happened one time. Because, I mean,
I would have thought it was like a red rag to a bull.
No, I can tell if, you know, people aren't good enough actors in order to, like, there was once where someone started talking a little bit, and I just stop. I go, you know who I am, you know what I do, shut the hell up. This is not I'm not going to show this clip. And then I just moved on. Like, and that's the only time it's even come close. Like, when people heckle, it's because they're drunk, it's because they have egos, it's because, I mean, hell, just the other day, someone, and this is one that, I hope I can get the tape.
Based on some of the comments, I would say that sometimes drunk people with egos watch YouTube. I would have just thought that you would have been inundated with people getting their heckle on because of them. But that, I guess,
yeah, I mean, it's a reasonable conclusion. But like just the other day, I had one where I was telling a story, and this one yelled out something in the middle of the story, and I ended up, just crushing her for the next 5 minutes. And then after the show, she comes over to me, and she keeps trying, and she's married there with her husband. And she comes over to me and, like, is upset that I'm not, like, literally says to me, you're not giving me enough attention. And I was like, see, that's the prototypical heckler. The person who wants everything to be about her no matter what. She didn't know who I was. She didn't watch the YouTube. She didn't come to the show because of that. She just desperately needed attention. And she was someone who was probably a lot prettier 10 years ago and is fading fast. and is now just...
Shots fired.
Well, I think a lot of things probably burn with her. But the point is that, like, this is someone who had glory, is losing it. And there is nothing sadder than someone who used to be a hot girl, because that's you lost your superpower. Imagine, like, what's life like for Superman post, like, if kryptonite was everywhere.
No, you bring up a valid point. That's absolutely true. I guess if your calling card is being hot girl, or like if you're a handsome gentleman and you have little to nothing else to offer the world. But
Sure.
I guess in the way
That's
that the
just
world is
rare.
sexist and unfair, I think guys, as long as you do sit-ups occasionally, can kind of keep that magic alive a little longer than females for some reason.
Absolutely. And in the way that the world is sexist and unfair, it's also that's why, like, if someone's hot when they're like 15 and they're treated like a goddess by everyone in their high school, that doesn't happen as much with like the cute boy when they're 15. And so it's a system that is set up to be sexist, but that regardless of why it's set up, it still happens. It's like, did you ever see Superman 1 when he gives up his powers for Lois? Or it was
I was just
Superman
thinking
2?
about it. Superman 2. No.
Superman 2.
That's the best Superman movie ever. I can't get into any of the new Superman movies.
Oh, Superman
because,
2 was amazing.
Yeah,
General
Christopher
Zod,
Reeve
the
to
best.
me is and always will be Superman. Like, just, his face looks like Superman's. The new guy, not so much. You know what really bothers me about the new guy as well? His hair. Not super. Doesn't do that little curl at the front. Bothers me. More with Steve Hofstetter next.
Where the left and right come together for fundamental truths. AD on the radio, on Twitter at ADSXE.
Every day you're going and working, running that rat race at that pace and that place will leave a bad taste for anyone, everyone, working day after day. So buddy, I gotta say, for you, there's gotta be a better way, yeah. And you do what they told ya, company man, feel it, a mindless little soldier. How can you live like that and maintain your composure? Before it's begun, your life's already freaking over. Yeah, I do what I want.
So we are joined on the show today by stand-up comedian Steve Hofstetter, who has, as much as he has a myriad of other achievements, multiple television shows, all sorts of stuff that he's done in all sorts of different forms of media. He's a sports writer. The list goes on and on and on. But the thing that he is known for, the best, is the fact that he's very, very good with hecklers. And that's been well documented on his YouTube page. Over 27 million views, and that winds up being your calling card. That's what people recognize you for. And you were just describing the prototypical heckler being a woman who came up to you after trying to heckle you at a show and said, "You're not giving me enough attention." And you likened it to Superman losing his powers. You said clearly she was super hot 10 years ago and not so much now. And it's obviously a little tough for her to take. So she's looking for attention anywhere she can get it, even the negative kind, at a comedy show. And the analogy of Superman losing his powers is really a good one.
Well, in Superman 2, there's that scene where he's in that diner.
Oh
And
my
that-
gosh!
And the big
Best.
he had just given up his powers so he could be a normal person,
Mm-hmm.
and this guy is being a jerk, and he decides, well, he's going to do the right thing and stand up for truth, justice, and what may or may not be the American way, and he stands up to like fight the guy, and he gets his butt kicked. Because
I love the line, though, where he's like, "Excuse me, sir, would you care to step outside?" Like, he fights like a gentleman. "Excuse me, sir, would you care to step outside for some fisticuffs?" And go on.
But my favorite line is when he goes back when he's got superpowers again and says, "That's funny, I've never seen garbage eat garbage before," which was just such a stupid 80s line. But anyway, the idea that he's still in his mind, he's still Superman. Like, in his mind, he's still like, I could still do this. But he can't because he's used to that. It's, that falling off the cliff when you have a power that you lose, I can only imagine is a terribly tough thing. And believe me, don't get me wrong, I get heckled by men just as much as women. I get asked that question a lot, like, who does it more? It's the typical is either formerly hot women who want to maintain that glory, or men who are ignored in the rest of their life for whatever reason. That want to be, okay, but now's my chance to shine. Like, people ignore me at the bottling plant, so why don't I go to this show and bother everybody, and won't I get attention then? But it really is, it's alcohol and ego.
Like, you might not be party to this. You might not see this. I don't know what the bathroom situation is for the venues that you play. If you have your own, or if you have to use the one at the club that everyone else is using. But I find it to be more or less the most insufferable thing ever. Like, I like to go see comedy as much as possible, and when I do, invariably, when you walk out and there's a long line for the men's room because everyone's been holding their big gulp since like the first 20 minutes of the show, you get in there and there's a line, and all the guys, universally, almost all the guys in the line are trying out shtick, like trying to be funny. And it is the most egregiously painful, awkward thing I've ever been a party to. The line at the men's room after a comedy show where everybody goes, hey, being funny seems fun. I could be funny. Let me, what is the deal with this line? I'm just like, no, stop. It was good. That was good what we just saw. What you're doing is just ruining it.
The most fun is going, if I have to, use the bathroom of the common people, and but doing it before I go up. Because, when I go in a club now, I'm at the point in my career where maybe a third of the audience knows who I am, and another third are people who came with them, and the other third are people who are just like, let's go see comedy, regardless of genre. Who cares who's on? We'll like it, and probably not. So so when I walk into the bathroom, it's very possible that people don't know who I am, and and that'll even happen like in the showroom. Like I had a great incident where I stand up in the back of the room to go, like, because I'm about to be called up to the stage, and the only place to stand without blocking someone's view is kind of next to this girl that was sitting down. And she looks at me and she goes, "What's your problem, creep?" And I just turn to her and I go, "You'll see." And she kind of just gives it like, whatever, like just this very like, and then they go, your headliner, Steve Hofstetter. And I just walk up to the stage. And it was just this moment where I got to, I knew the ending of the story and she didn't. And it was just so much fun to just be like, hey, honey, not everything's about you.
Right. There's something magical about that, though. There's something magical about, like, and it used to happen at shows all the time. It happened when I was in a band, and it happened when I would go see bands. There was a band called Life of Agony. I don't know if you know them. You're from New York. Maybe they were sort of like a big part of the New York City hardcore scene, I guess. I
don't
late
know
90s.
them, but their name speaks to me.
Yeah, Life of Agony. And they had, when my band was on tour, we would always be like a day or two in front of or behind Life of Agony playing the same place. And it was always the same thing. Oh my God, they just wrecked the joint. It was amazing. The singer has more charisma than anybody on the face of the planet. It's just an amazing, amazing show. And I finally got a chance to see them, and I'm getting ready for them to go on stage, and I see all the guys on stage getting ready to start playing, and this like hum starts coming from the stage, and they're feeding back and they're getting into it, and I'm like, where's the singer? And I'm standing next to a video game. All of a sudden, the guy playing Miss Pac-Man turns around, leaves the game, jumps on stage, and starts singing. I was like, oh my God, you just did that!
Oh, that's awesome.
So hang it up, just give it up. It's time somebody lets you know that you will never be good enough. You will never be one of us. You will never be good enough. You know why?
Don't get the blues, get all the news. We mean all of you guys out there in Radioland. All aboard!
He's back. AD on the radio.
Give it up, yeah. Give it up, yeah. Bring this on, come on, come on. That's the way you do what we do. That's the way you do what we do. That's the way you do what we do. You do what we do. You do what we do. That's the way you do what we do. That's the way you do what we do. That's the way you do what we do. You do what we do. You do what we do. Well, it's a new one. Here I come again, coming again, taking it back to the place where I'm picking up the pen and before I started.
So we didn't have a chance to get to it yesterday. Maybe today we will. I wanted to talk a little bit about your biggest fears, the stuff that strikes fear into your heart, mind, bowels, even as you wake up in the morning and get ready to go through your day. What is the worst case scenario? What is the thing that keeps you up at night and then plagues your thoughts as you try and make your way in this world? Only because I found out what the biggest fears, the top 3 fears of people in America are. And I want you to think about yours, and we'll compare notes a little later on in the show. We are joined on the show today by Steve Hofstetter, who is a stand-up comedian extraordinaire, hanging out for a number of reasons, not least of which is is, well, we're on in Florida on Real Radio 104.1, and you are making your way to Orlando with your baseball podcast, Major League Podcast, to play Bombshells Comedy. And you can get, where is it? ComedySupply.com. You might still be able to get some free tickets to go see Steve. You got some buddies in tow with you, and what you're doing is really cool. It's sort of like this baseball/comedy road trip where you're going to go watch some spring training games and do some comedy.
It's going to be so much fun. We have a game that we're going to each day, and then a show that we're doing each night. It's such a little kid thing to do. Like, it's just one of these things of like,
it's amazing.
What would I do if I were 8 years old and had money? Oh, I would do this.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm doing.
It's very, very cool, and you're finding a way to get yourself paid whilst doing it, and it seems like a great, great thing to do. Who are you bringing with you when you? And by the way, where can people listen to Major League Podcast?
So Matt Ritter and Danny Jolish are coming, and Major League Podcast, you can go to majorleaguepodcast.com. Or, iTunes or Stitcher or all that other stuff, and we're fairly new. We're only a couple weeks in, and it eventually is going to be syndicated on a bunch of different radio stations, but I cannot say which ones yet. But yeah, we're just majorleaguepodcast.com. You can get all the info and listen. We've got 4 episodes out already with a bunch of former baseball players, and we've got next week is Mark Gubicza, and I'm so excited for that one. That was such a fun one to do. Gubicza was, one of the great pitchers of the Kansas City Royals teams in the 80s, and he was a ton of fun. He's a broadcaster for the Angels now.
And what Major League Podcast is basically going and asking former Major League Baseball players very tough and oftentimes quite embarrassing questions, correct?
Yeah, it's something where we focus on them as a person, not as a player. We'll never be like, was that a curveball in the 8th inning? Like, we don't really care. For us, it's more of like, how did it feel to get released? Are you disappointed? Like, I asked Gubicza, hey, you were left off the Hall of Fame ballot, and even though you were eligible, would you rather have been on the ballot and got no votes or be left off completely? Like, which is a worse fate? And so,
do they know going in that you're going to ask that? Because
yes.
You get somebody like that, and obviously, they're used to being asked questions about, was that a curveball in the 8th inning? Oh God, you're so great. You are one of the greats. Let's talk about how great you are. And you come in and go, let's talk about your most dismal failures. I know you've had a lot of really awesome stuff happen to you, but let's talk about a couple moments that sucked. Do they know that going in?
Well, what I tell them is it's 70% documentary and 30% abject silliness. And, and we're looking to talk to you as a person and not a player. Like Bob Boone, who we're going to interview while we're down in Florida, he's the assistant GM of the Nationals now. I told him that, and I said, focus on you as a person, not as a player. He goes, well, that'll only be 10 minutes. What are you going to do for the rest of the episode? So, like, they're cool about it, and you got to make sure to get the ones with the right personality. And one of the guys I'm going to interview coming up, former Met, and he has become a dear friend of mine, Greg Jeffries, who
nice.
Such a fun personality and just has so many great stories to tell. So I can't wait for that episode.
Hey, do you know anything? Because Steve, amongst all the other things that he does, is a sports writer as well. Do you know anything about Gronk from the Patriots, Rob Gronkowski, offering a couple $10,000 to have sex on a public beach? Did you catch this?
I didn't see that story. I know a great deal about the lap dance story because that happened to a friend of mine.
Okay.
A friend and coworker. So the one that happened right before the Super Bowl. Yeah. So I guess I should fill the listeners in case people don't know. So Julie Stewart-Binks was co-hosting Jason Whitlock's house party show on FS1, and she, as a joke, they found out that as a pre-planned joke, this was all everybody knew it was going to happen. They found out that Gronk had done a little bit of stripping in college, I think it was. And so she said, hey, would you like to make a little extra money and give me a lap dance right now? And he was a good sport about it. It's the week before the Super Bowl. Nothing is happening. By this, it's a week and a half into the media circus around the Super Bowl. So by this time, the question is just like, so are you still playing football? Like, there's nothing left. So this was great. It got a ton of views. It was very funny. It was, so for a couple seconds he grinds on her a little bit. She throws a couple ones at him. It's a funny goofball segment. And then there was a ton of heat that came back at her about saying how, this was denigrating to women and how dare you. And I'm watching this, I'm laughing at the whole thing because I know Julie. I've worked with Julie. She is the most badass, take no prisoners feminist I've ever worked with. And so for people to say that, it was just they just wanted their own little hot takes and wanted to get upset about something. And
so wasn't there another female sports broadcaster that went off after her pretty hard on Twitter?
Yeah, Dana O'Neill tried to take her to task, and it was just such, and Julie said it the next day that what Dana did was actually, what she did was setting women back because she was slut-shaming and she was, and she was taking someone down for having an opinion other than hers it was just a really garbage thing to do. And I would say that I lost all respect for Dana O'Neill, but I actually didn't know who she was before then. So I can't, but I will say I didn't gain any, and I am team Binksy all the way.
Well, I mean, like, here's the thing. If people want to say it's denigrating to women, I think the exact opposite. Here's a guy that makes tens of millions of dollars a year, and she's like, here's $6, dance for me, bitch. And he does it, like, completely eating out of her hand. I would say in that situation, she was the one with the power, if you want to analyze that.
If anything, it objectified men, or I guess objectified Gronks, because I don't think Gronk is I think he's his own little species. He's his own little subset. Like on Facebook now, you know how you can choose all the different types of genders? There are like 25 genders. I think Gronk is one of them. It's a very specific... You're a Gronk. I thought it was funny, and it's parody is what it was. It's satire. And people need to, sometimes people need to not, it's on a show called House Party. Like, shut up. Stop taking it so seriously.
Yeah, people need to settle the hell down. But, case in point, you did not know who this person was before they attacked your coworker, and now they got themselves a little bit of notoriety. And
that's why she did it.
Yeah, and that's sadly it worked for her, by running down another woman, by starting sort of like something that sets everybody back a little bit, and she got her name out there slightly, and it's horrible. And when you think about it, that actually worked for her. Go on.
I was saying my favorite thing about it is the way she tweeted it. She said, "I'm not going to retweet this video to give it any more publicity." And it's like, A, you mentioned it, so you're giving it more publicity. B, who was asking you to retweet it? Was there like a bunch of people being like, "Hey, basketball reporter, how come you haven't talked about football yet?" Like, that's not, no one was saying that.
Gronk is his own species. Robin Gronkowski from the New England Patriots, in case you did not know, hosted a cruise from Miami to the Bahamas this past weekend just gone by. It was a nonstop party. When they got to the Bahamas, the party spilled out onto the beach where he spun some tunes. Apparently, he is not only a football player extraordinaire, but a bit of a super scratch DJ as well. And he offered a couple $10,000 to have sex in front of everybody else right there on the beach. Like I said, in front of everyone. There's a video circulating online. It appears they turned him down. I can't play it just because we haven't had time to edit the profanity out. But it's an interesting watch. You know what I'll do? I'll post it on Twitter.
If you can afford a cruise with Gronk, you can afford to turn down $10,000 to have sex on the beach in front of everybody. Like, that's a big. You'd have to up that number a great deal to make an impact, Gronk. But he also probably doesn't know how money works.
Right.
Like, I mean, aside from the fact that he probably doesn't know how a lot of things work, I think he doesn't know how money works because, like, when you come out of college and are just handed millions of dollars, like, you just don't understand what money is to people.
Yeah, $10,000. That sounds a lot like that sounds like it would be a lot to folks like you. Is it? I guess. Yeah.
$10,000 is a lot of money. It's not a lot of money to go into porn. Like, there's a pretty big
I don't know.
jump
Funkhauser
there.
works with some porn folks. I would hazard a guess that most of the people that he works with, let's clarify the situation. Funkhauser, define what you do with people in the adult industry.
I don't know how to do that.
At no point do you take your clothes off,
Oh,
correct?
no, not currently, no.
But knowing what you know about the going rate, knowing what you know about the going rate for people to do that sort of thing, $10,000, that would probably be like for having to do it once on camera. $10,000 would probably be a halfway decent payday for some of these folks, right?
That's but that's for people who you're talking about, people who already want to go in the industry.
Well, yeah.
Like there's people. I mean, that's talk about fears. I'd imagine that's one of the three. Being naked in front of everybody.
Yeah.
True story. Like when I was a kid, my hippie parents, my mom like I was a forced vegan for like 12 years of my life. No artificial colors, no artificial flavors, no that 1 hour of television a week. I had to set the kitchen timer on top of the TV set, and sometimes I get caught like sneaking it back so I could see the rest of Sesame Street. Yeah, yeah. No, it was like occasionally I was allowed to watch, like they would call it free TV, which wouldn't impede into my hour a week of being allowed to watch television. And whenever it was PBS. It was either sort of like children's television workshop stuff like Sesame Street or the Electric Company or something of that nature, or reruns of Bob Ross, some sort of like
so good.
Yeah. It was so good.
I was not a Sesame Street guy. I was an Electric Company guy. That was my show.
It was great. Wasn't Morgan Freeman on Electric Company?
Maybe. I don't know. I think
he was
like
called
3, so it's hard to.
But they've played it in perpetuity, and I don't remember who was on it. Like I remember watching it as a kid, but I'm fairly confident that I've seen Funkhauser. See if you can find Morgan Freeman on Electric Company. I think he was a character called Easy Reader. I don't know if you caught this. Morgan Freeman is now giving driving directions on Waze. You can have him be your navigation. Have you heard this?
I saw that. I actually don't.
The time has arrived, President.
I don't use any of the names or any of the celebrities on any of the GPS stuff because they can't read the street names. Like it's all they just do the turn right, but like I wanna hear the street name. It helps me a lot, and also I really enjoy listening to the computer mispronounce street names.
We have a lot of them here in LA.
Because there's a lot of I guess Spanish descent names of the streets in LA, so it's very difficult for the white bread computer voice to pronounce them.
So my Siri can't recognize the name of my street, which is like Italian or something like that. It's Italian, and what's strange is like if I say it, she won't recognize it.
Yeah.
She'll turn it into something different, and then like when I type it in and it says, okay, navigating to this, and it has some weird pronunciation, I'll try and copy her pronunciation of my street name when I read it back to her, and it never works. So what I have to do instead is I have to ask to be navigated to the IKEA across from where I live. It's just
Danny Jollis, one of the comedians who's coming with me to Orlando, Siri will not take Jollis as a last name. Like I have to, she calls him Yallis. And so I have to, and so whenever I call him, I say to Siri, call Danny Yallis. And so now in my head, he's Danny Yallis to the point where I referred to him like that in front of him once to someone else. And I was like, it's a Siri. I'm sorry.
I can't explain myself.
I have to call you that to call you. It's dumb.
We'll talk about our biggest fears when we get back. Thank you so much to Steve Hofstetter for hanging out. We'll be back shortly.
Now, more AD on the radio.
So, Funkhauser, did you find the audio of Morgan Freeman on the Electric Company being the character Easy Reader? All right, let's give that a listen.
Okay, brothers and sisters and misses and misters, here's your daddy-o with the sounds to go. No shucking, no jiving, I'm telling you, your music's arriving. Ha ha, what I say. It's Mel Mounds here with our special request game called The Same as Your Name. That's right, one of you lucky listeners out there will get a chance to pick the next song. And the name of that song will have a sound that sounds the same as your name. I'll show you just how it works, but first let's Pick the picker. I'll spin now a pick of the pack pick picker, which contains the names of all you fans.
He's talking so fast. If I'm like 3, which I was at the time, I am lost.
I'm lost now.
Brenda Bradley.
Well,
I wish we had
Morgan
that
Freeman.
sound effect, though. Though. Every time we stop talking, hawking.
Was that what DJs were like in the 70s? Like, or the 80s, or whenever the hell that was from? Like, did you have to did you have to talk really fast and rhyme occasionally to do the job that we do now, where we basically open up the mic and hope for the best? It used to be tougher back in the day, I guess.
I think so, but it also used to pay more back in the day.
Right. Yeah, no. Everybody always tells me that I got into radio right after all the fun and money went out of it. They're like, "Oh, you got in after Nipplegate at the Super Bowl." Yeah, that's when everything started sucking. So, well, when did you start in radio? Like 2-3 years after that? Oh, sucks to be you.
And stand up also, like when they're like, yeah, the opening act they not only paid for the flight for the opening act, they used to fly him first class. Be like, "Oh, that's fantastic," because now the headliner buys his own ticket. So really great to know that. So happy to know that.
Wow. Actually, I'm not just because I'm very interested in how other industries work.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not pressing you on how much money you make, but is there sort of like a middle class of comic? Because to the best of my understanding, in radio, there used to be sort of like guys that could make, I don't know, $75,000, $80,000 a year. And then there used to be folks that were just getting in that would make $30,000, $40,000 a year. And, now either you are part-time making $7 an hour and living on top ramen. If you've got three other sort of like bartending gigs to support your radio habit, or you are making Howard Stern money. It's either sort of like you are literally starving or you own a good chunk of the Western Hemisphere. And the middle class of radio seems to have disappeared. What's it like in comedy now?
There is absolutely middle class in comedy. And one of the things that, that my wife often says about, the thing that she learned the most, that surprised her the most from knowing me and learning about comedy, is that there are people who are making, 50, 60 grand a year as comics who no one's ever heard of. Because they're doing it at strip malls in the middle of nowhere. They're doing it on cruise ships. They're doing it on corporate events. There's also, like, the corporate circuit pays a lot. And if you're a guy who can do, clean, kind of non-offensive material, you can make a good living on the corporate circuit. You can make, 100, 150 a year on the corporate circuit. Now, it's soul-crushing, awful work. That said, if anybody listening needs a comic for a corporate event, please, my website is stevehofstetter.com. But
crush my soul, crush it.
Oh, crush my soul, but make sure the check clears. The point is that, there is definitely a middle ground in comedy, and I think that that's something that'll always exist because what we do is recession-proof. When 2008 hit, I was touring with another comic, and we were talking about, what do we do if this really all goes away? If the entire economy crumbles, what do we do? And he said, well, what we do is we put a hat in a park and ask for $2 a head, and we make the same amount of money we're making now, just the club doesn't take anything from us.
Wow.
And that's what we would do.
Interesting. That's interesting. So if you are like a middle-class comedian, you could make like $60,000 a year?
It's difficult. Believe me, getting up to that is difficult. There is it's very, very difficult to make anything more than like 10 grand. And but once you get over that hump and you're actually getting a bunch of those gigs, 30 to 80 is completely reasonable. And then once you're starting being successful and actually they're booking you, not just having you fill a spot. Like when you're the draw, when you're, that's when you can start making, over 100 and start clearing those. And then when you're regularly on TV, that's when things change.
So, like, I remember seeing, do you remember the story arc? It was at the end of one of the seasons of Louis C.K.'s sitcom, where he gets sort of like tapped to replace David Letterman.
That was one of my favorite, that arc was incredible.
Oh, it was absolutely incredible. And, again, some of the best television ever. But the thing that was interesting was I'll never forget, like, the guy who's sort of enticing him to try out for the gig. He's like, you're doing okay now. I bet you're clearing about $80,000 a year, but that's going to fall. Your time in the sun will be over in the next 2 to 3 years, and it'll be ever decreasing returns until you kind of wind up penniless, not able to support your kids as they go off to college and do things like that. And I remember hearing that. I go, $80,000 a year. I wonder at like how accurate a representation that is of what a stand-up comic makes. And obviously Louis C.K.'s character is, pre being one of the biggest comics on the face of the planet in the show, but still sort of like a working comedian.
Not just working, but working very successfully and having been on television. When I say being on television, I mean like regularly, and I mean like on your own show. That's when you really make money. When you're in, I just got a residual check yesterday for $37. And I really wanted to take a picture of it and say, like, just because you're on television doesn't mean you're a millionaire. Like, what you have to do is you have to be a good enough live act that the people who see you on TV will then want to come see you, and then you make money off of those shows. And, and it just kind of, and then because you're popular live, you get more television, et cetera, et cetera. Like, you have to snowball it. But it's something where it takes a lot of work to make a good living at stand-up. And a lot of people think that, like, oh, I'm funny, so I'm going to be rich. It's like, well, first of all, you're not even that funny. Second of all, like, it takes a long time before there's enough people who want to buy a ticket to see you in order for you to actually make a living at it.
We will talk about more on the middle class of comedy when we return. Plus, we'll talk about your biggest fears. Thank you so much for hanging out.
Jamming on the one like Theo Huxtable. Days like this when I feel untouchable. I try and make up for all the wrongs I did by living my life like a Cosby kid. Jamming on the one like Theo and Stevie. I know it sounds crazy, but you gotta believe me when I feel like I just can't make it through. I try to think, what would Cliff tell Theo to do? Man, sometimes it's just so hard to be a good person, to lift yourself up and try.
There's something happening here, and you should know what it is. The Dumbing Up of America. Now, more AD on the radio.
So we're talking about what the middle class of comedy makes, what sort of money. There was an amazing story arc on the sitcom Louie about Louis C.K. in which he's offered a shot at taking David Letterman's place, and the sort of the guy that tries to entice him to try out for the gig, he was just like, I'm guessing you make about $80,000 a year now, but how long is Zach gonna last? It's not your moment in the sun is not going to go forever and ever. And we have a comic on the show that's been able to lend some credence to these stories. Steve Hofstetter, not only a stand-up comedian, also a sports writer, also our future robot overlord. I think he's chosen. We're like, what do we call this guy? Generation X Renaissance dude? I don't know, but future robot overlord is how he'd like to be referred to moving forward. So welcome back to the show, future robot overlord.
That music is fantastic. Here's how it works. You can't really get paid much money to do comedy in New York or LA because there are so many comics, and so with the supply and demand of the thing. And I don't mean I produce a show called Supply and Demand, so that's not what I mean. But the actual supply and demand of it, spots in New York and LA, even if they pay, will pay literally between $20 to $100 a spot. Like you're going to go see someone, you're paying $20, and that person is only making $20. But the road is where people make money, and so a road club will pay a comic. The really budget ones will pay like $600 for 2 or 3 days, but most comics who are worth anything will get the $1,500-ish, and then the comics who are actually celebrities, you start seeing $3,000, $5,000. The ones who are very, very big start making $10,000 to $20,000 just for that week. So, but those are people who are already rich and famous. Those are the Attels or the Burrs. You're talking 20, 30, 40,000. So And that's just for a week. So the guys who are the grunts, the workaday guys, the just funnies, as we call them, the people who are great but, don't have a name yet, they can expect, depending on the club, anywhere from, $1,000 to $2,000 for a weekend. And it just depends on how many weekends can you work in a year.
When I was in a band, there was a tipping point. Like, you could always look at it. Like, you can put 100 or 200 people into a club. That means literally nothing. They're going to pay you less than it takes to get your tour bus to that club. Like 200 people, that means nothing to no one. You put 500 people in there, and all of a sudden you're jumping up to a couple grand. And if you can put 1,000 people in a room, that's $10,000. Like $7,000 to $10,000. Like, if you can get 1,000 people to show up, have a good time, buy drinks, rock out, that's worth 10 grand of any promoter's money. And it's interesting how, like, the first 200 are worth nothing. Like, being able to put 250 people in a room is kind of an accomplishment, I think, for anybody doing any kind of entertainment.
It is.
But it means nothing. But the jump from 250 to 500 to 1,000, it just, like, it grows beyond exponentially. Well, it's an interesting one.
It really depends on whether those people would come in the room for anyone else. It's like the baseball stat, the wins above replacement. It's it's a question of, will people come for any old schlub? Well, then these tickets aren't yours; they're anyone's. So what I'll do often, and it's one of the things I'm doing, when I'm down in Orlando, is I'll reach out to a bar that doesn't usually have comedy that, for an off night, we'll go in and we'll do a Monday or Tuesday, and we'll say, what do you get, normally 10 or 20 people? Well, how about this? We're going to get paid per head, or we're going to keep the ticket money, or whatever it is. You're going to sell a bunch more drinks, and let's experiment. And not only do they enjoy it because they're selling a bunch of drinks, but they're also getting a bunch of publicity because we're doing radio and we're doing television and we're doing, newspaper interviews and all this stuff. And so it works really well for that venue. Whereas if I go to a comedy club and I say, hey, I'm going to put 200 people in your venue, they go, well, we would have 75 anyway, so those are worthless. So,
right.
You have to understand not just what your draw is, but you have to understand what the business you're working with wants.
And, like, at what stage in the game do you start sort of, like, promoting your own shows? Meaning, like, Louis C.K. talked about what it's like to play Madison Square Garden, which is basically, if you do it like him, you got to rent it out. And that's really expensive, and you can take a bath if you can't sell tickets. And that works, again, I've seen this happen. I've seen that, like, savvy local bands will realize, hey, we're good for, like, 500, 600 people, anywhere between 500 and 1,000 people. We could get a guarantee from the club, or we could rent it out, pay their production costs for the night, and take all the money. Like, at what stage in the game do comedians start going, like, all right, I'm going to, instead of be booked into this venue, I'm going to rent it out for the evening? Well,
most of them don't, because they're horrifically lazy. But it's I'm going to write a column. I keep meaning to write it. It's called "You're All a Bunch of Hacks," and it's not about comedians on stage. It's about off stage. It's about the idea of, like, hey, on stage you strive to be the most creative, the most brilliant, the most original, and then off stage you do the same garbage promotion people have been doing for 30 years. Why are you such a hack off stage? And and obviously there are definitely comedians who aren't in that mold, but a lot of us unfortunately are. At what point do you realize that you don't need to give your money to someone else anymore? When you are drawing better than their average, when you end up, I guess you give them your money for, a couple times until you go, hey, I can draw 100 people, so let me find a venue that seats 100 and they will like this.
Right. It's interesting. You say they're hacks, but, like, not everybody is as smart as you. Not everybody has the business acumen, and not everybody has, like, a lot of people lack the get up and go, and that's their own problem.
But they're smart on stage. That's what I'm saying. Like, the people who are the wittiest, most original, incredible free thinkers that exist, and then they go, oh, so people have been on Twitter for 8 years? Well, why don't I go do Twitter?
Yeah. There's honestly some, like, I guess it's a common thread that runs through artists, musicians, creative people, because I know musicians that are so unbelievably articulate, genius level on their chosen instrument, piano, guitar, whatever you want to call it, where you hear them play and you go, some part of this person is a genius. There's no way you can be an idiot and sit down and make that sort of sound come out of a musical instrument unless your brain is functioning at a higher level than the rest of us. And then they put the instrument down, and it's like they're savants, where it's just like that part of their brain is infeasibly well developed and it, like not even well developed. It's like a gift from God. It's like a gift from somewhere else. And then they can barely string a sentence together, and they don't have a job, and they don't have a car, and they don't have a credit card, and they don't know how to function as a real sort of like productive member of society. But when they pick up that instrument, whether it be their voice as a comedian or whether it be an actual instrument, they are next level Stephen Hawking style geniuses at that. And it's like, it's a weird curse that I think a lot of creative people have, that they just kind of can't connect the dots in other parts of life.
I would absolutely agree with you on that. And what I say is I say I'm not smart, I'm perceptive. And that's the difference is, you know, I have the ability to, when two people are arguing, I can go, hey, this person means that and that person means that, come together on this. Like, I can do that. You know, I'm not someone who can memorize a ton of statistics unless, of course, they have to do with baseball, in which case I know everything. But the point the point is that, like, so perception is how I find humor, because I can understand why someone thinks something's funny. And perception is why I can go, okay, well, this is how you sell something to somebody. These are what audience members want. This is what the bar owner wants, etc. And so it's not about intelligence. It's about understanding the world, I think. Understanding people.
Yeah, it's a business sense that not a lot of people have. You're very fortunate. Well, yes. Well, a fear of failure and the fact that he is our future robot overlord have set Steve Hofstetter up well in the world of comedy. You can see him, if you're one of our listeners in Florida, on Real Radio 104.1. You can see him in Orlando at Bombshells. Get yourself some tickets. They could still be free at comedysupply.com. He's doing a road trip out there with some of his buddies. They're going to go watch spring training baseball games, get content for the Major League podcast, one of his many projects, and they're going to be doing a night of comedy at Bombshells. All right, let's talk a little bit about our biggest fears, shall we? Funkhauser, what are your biggest fears? 1, 2, maybe 3 of them.
Falling from a height taller than myself, breaking something, seeing somebody die is probably a fear, and
I've been to enough open mics that I'm not afraid of seeing anyone die.
Yeah,
I'm desensitized to it.
Those are good ones.
For it sometimes.
Earthquakes. I like earthquakes too. I mean, I'm scared.
I could see that. Earthquakes, planes, things where you're completely out of control. I could understand that. It's just, I know a lot of people, like, I'm hideously obsessive compulsive, and I've talked to some other people that feel like they have a hint of being obsessive compulsive. And they're like, I really spend a lot of time organizing my socks when I go on trips in my suitcase. I was like, that's because you're about to go into a situation where you don't have control. Yes. So you're seeking to control something that is within your grasp. And so, what about you, Hofstetter? What would you say are your main fears?
Absolutely failure. Fear of failure, not mattering. Like, all of a sudden everyone is quiet and not responding. Like, that terrifies me in terms of, like, less abject concepts. I'd say, that's a tough one. Maybe slow pain. Like dying, whatever it is. Like, I'm not really afraid of death as much as I'm afraid of the pain before death, like burning alive, that sort of thing. Like that's terrifying to me.
Or how about being unconscious and being aware? Everybody thinks you're not.
Oh, yeah, that would absolutely... Well, that would relate to my first one, I think. Yeah, absolutely.
Getting surgery done, be like, oh, my God, I can't move to tell anyone, but I can see, feel, and hear everything.
Yeah, and frankly, losing my mind... Like, I've said, the second I get to the point where I can't be funny anymore, where I can't be interesting anymore, pull the plug. That's not life for me.
Wow.
Like, my life involves relating to people with wit, and if I'm not all there anymore, I'm done.
It's interesting. Like, you're, I guess... It's
That's
so
the sound
funny
I make when I die.
I think that you fall into the category of I very much relate to what you just said in terms of the thing that you are afraid of is sort of like, not connecting with people, like it just doesn't work anymore or what have you. And I don't think that you have that burning desire for attention and adulation that a lot of people in your game do, but I think that you fear failure and you want to be a success. And interaction on Twitter, 27 million YouTube views. These are not things where you go, I'm awesome. You go, oh, good, I'm doing my job well. I wanted to make a career of this, and this is an indicator that things are moving in the right direction. Yay.
Well, but I still, I'll still reload my notifications. I'll still check my mentions. I don't do it on YouTube anymore because YouTube, it's overwhelming at this point. But right. But I still want that interaction. And as annoyed as I get by the interaction, if it went away, I would be terrified. It's something where it's wanting to matter. That's absolutely it. It's wanting to matter.
Wanting to matter. A search for significance.
Yes.
You are not like the rest of America. The top 3 things we're afraid of: mass shootings, Trump becoming president, and ISIS. True story. We'll leave you with that. Maybe we'll touch on it tomorrow. Thank you so much for hanging out. Have yourself an awesome one.
All 3 are related.
Times you feel like it's cool to turn the other cheek and give people the benefit of the doubt even when they don't deserve it. And sometimes you feel good about yourself for being the better person and doing that. Well, this is not one of those times. I don't think you realize what's on my mind. I've been too nice.